On the phone, pleasure to welcome to the program Josh Eidelson, contributing writer with Salon and In These Times, has a new piece out in The Nation magazine this month. Josh, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Sam.
So, Josh, give us some background on these wildcat strikes involving Walmart over the past, I guess, couple of weeks now.
Yeah, there really are two plot lines that have come together here. One is there's been a chain of strikes in Walmart's supply chain going back to June. In June, we saw workers who supply to Walmart go on strike at a seafood company. In September, we saw warehouse workers who are moving goods for Walmart, and that led up to this totally historic strike that we've seen last week and the week before by retail workers who are directly employed by Walmart, which is also the consequence of organizing that's been going on now for over a year by this group, Our Walmart, organizing retail workers, which is closely tied to the United Food and Commercial Workers. So the combination of that long-term organizing and the inspiration from these other workers in the supply chain led to the first and the second strikes by Walmart retail workers at multiple stores in 50 years of Walmart's history.
Wow. And so now Our Walmart, it's not a union, right?
Right. It's a group that doesn't identify as a union, isn't asking for recognition as a union, is closely tied to and supported by the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, but identifies as a worker group, something that is increasingly common in the United States given how terrible labor law has become. In fact, this isn't even the first group like this that's tried to organize at Walmart. The UFCW and ACORN and SEIU supported another group like this last year. The tremendous difference is this one has organized effectively enough that 160 retail workers went on strike.
And so now now I know the implications of this are pretty large because Walmart employs, and this is an astonishing figure. Tell me if I've got this wrong. 1% of the American workforce. Is that right?
That is right. 1.4 million people are directly employed by Walmart. That doesn't count workers like the seafood workers or the warehouse workers whose jobs depend on Walmart, whose conditions really are dictated by Walmart. But 1.4 million people get their paycheck from Walmart.
All right, well, let's start with the supply chain. Like you say, these strikes have been going on for a while. How does Walmart influence the supply chain working conditions so much?
So I reported for Salon on a report by the National Employment Law Project, whose author, Kathy Ruckelshaus, the co-author of the report, told me every year Walmart dictates to each of its suppliers that they need to do the same work for cheaper. And so they cut, and it reaches the point where labor is the only place you can cut. And I should say, the reporter, I had the fun experience with this report of reading through Walmart's rebuttal. It's 4 pages long. It's called Myths and Facts. But you read each of the so-called myths from the report, and Walmart offers you a fact that doesn't actually contradict what the report said. And that report's findings, that this is systematic in Walmart's supply chain, where Walmart is the one at the end of the supply chain, the workers are getting squeezed, it's backed up by other groups. In fact, the National Guest Worker Alliance, their lead organizer who was involved in the strike at CJ's Seafood, said even if you had a really ethical person running one of these suppliers, there just isn't actually an option economically to treat your workers well given the dictates from Walmart. And where Walmart wants to, it's heavily involved. So at some of the warehouses where there have been issues, there's someone from Walmart on the premises every single day watching what's going on. When there are problems, though, Walmart disclaims any kind of responsibility.
So these are basically like equivalent to like wholly owned subsidies of Walmart. It's just that there is there's enough arm's length here to essentially create some lack of liability, I guess, both sort of legally, but also sort of, I guess, I don't want to say morally, but morally, and in terms of just everything that's involved in their labor relations.
That is often the effect. I mean, take the example in Elwood, Illinois, of the warehouse workers there who struck. That is Walmart's largest distribution center in the United States. This building is totally owned by Walmart. 70% of Walmart's imports come through this one building, but the workers supposedly don't work for Walmart. They work for this company, Roadlink.
And that company has no other business other than to supply Walmart.
At that location, all they're doing is supplying Walmart.
Okay.
And Walmart, they try to have it both ways. And so, for example, there where workers said they had wages stolen, they had retaliation, they had unsafe working conditions, Walmart told me that they did their own inspections and that they saw no issues at those facilities. But at the same moment, they say, the issue isn't with us because we're not these people's employer.
And let me ask you this. Now, Walmart's business model relies so heavily on this low-cost labor, which in turn also relies so heavily on government largesse in the form of healthcare. I mean, Walmart famously has seminars on how to get government assistance while you're working at Walmart, right?
Right. Walmart has been reported on previously encouraging workers to get on public assistance. And there's every reason that those workers shouldn't get public assistance because they are the working poor. But what is shameful is that Walmart has a business model that's based on keeping people in poverty.
Right. And is essentially using the existence of assistance for the working poor as part of their business model, right? I mean, we are subsidizing, and it's not like a happenstance thing. I mean, this obviously is a strategic decision by Walmart. We can increase our revenue by hiring low-cost workers who will be effective, even more effective if we make sure that they are on government assistance so that it maintains their productivity and so that we are not considered sort of sweatshops, I guess. I mean, this is all part of their strategy.
In fact, there was an attempt years ago in a few states to push laws that would have billed companies like Walmart for the cost of public assistance. Those attempts were unsuccessful, as have been many of the efforts to hold Walmart accountable. But yes, Walmart has a business model that's all about retail workers in poverty, suppliers in poverty, and using aggressive union busting and screening of employees to make it harder for people to organize and do something about those conditions and get a piece of that tremendous wealth that the Walton family has secured for itself.
Do you have a sense? I mean, I imagine this is something that one needs to get to write a doctoral thesis on. But the relationship between, I mean, look, you've got an entity that employs 1% of the American public. I mean, it's just stunning, not including the like you say the supply chain. What impact does what Walmart have on or I should say, let me phrase it this way. Which came first? Which is the egg and the chicken here in terms of I would imagine what Walmart does is it creates a model for other businesses. It also, in the real world, depresses wages or was its business model developed around the fact that they saw the ability of just how low they could hire labor? I mean, which came first? What is the dynamic there?
Well, I think there's a back and forth. I mean, Walmart absolutely is a key national economic player. Matt Stoller recently reported at Naked Capitalism that the Federal Open Markets Committee of the Fed has constantly, according to transcripts that now have been released, constantly been in touch with Walmart to find out ahead of time which way the economy is heading based on what is going on in Walmart stores. But what we see is that the old trend, where even if you didn't have a union, having unionized shops in your industry would force the standards up for everybody, in many ways has been superseded by this opposite trend, where even the unionized supermarkets, Walmart brags about how their pay, they say, is better than unionized supermarkets. You can quibble with the statistics, but the reality is Walmart absolutely has been successful in holding the standards down even in the places where people have unions, and holding the standards down in the larger economy because they are such a large gorilla. And it's not that there aren't other ways to run a business. A company like Costco isn't perfect, but has delivered for their shareholders and has delivered for their customers in part because they invest more in their workers, and that pays off in terms of productivity and in terms of their lower turnover costs. But Walmart, effectively, their low-road way of doing business gets tremendous political support and legal backup, and it keeps spreading.
And so let's talk about this, our Walmart. I mean, what are the implications of how common is this the presence of organizing of labor organizations that are not unions, and what does it allow them to do that a union could not do?
Well, it's a growing trend. I'll actually have a feature in the American Prospect on this out next month because of how bad labor law is. So, for example, Janice Fine, a Rutgers professor in 1992, tried to count the number of organizations that aren't unions that are organizing and mobilizing workers. She found 5. Now she finds 217. And narrowly, I mean, in the legal sense, these organizations have somewhat more freedom in terms of boycotting other companies in the supply chain because they aren't restricted in the same way by Taft-Hartley. They also are able to organize workers who are excluded. By one estimate 10 years ago, Congress found 22% of the workforce is just excluded from collective bargaining. In the case of Walmart, though, I think what's more significant is just that there is so much fear around unionization based on the company's record, based on, for example, the store in Canada that was flat out shut down after workers voted for a union, that I think this made it easier to get in the door with workers, to start the conversation. Now, what we've seen is that Walmart has responded much as though it was a union, not just because it's backed by a union, but because they don't want workers organizing for leverage, whatever label you put on it. And so you've still had, for example, captive audience meetings where workers on the clock are forced to sit in meetings and be lectured to about why they shouldn't be involved in our Walmart. But clearly, this model so far, this time around, is getting results. Going on strike is a very scary, very hard thing to do, especially against Walmart, and workers have done it. So what our Walmart has been doing so far is working.
And so, what's happening now in terms of the strikes? Are they continuing? Are they spreading across the country? How does it? What are the mechanics? I mean, we're not talking about a lot of people here, right? But we're talking about different incidences that are breaking out across the country.
Right. So far, we're talking about 1 out of 10,000 Walmart retail workers.
Wow.
So that speaks to there's a lot of work ahead. The first kind of escalation that happened among the retail workers was from workers for one day going on strike just in Southern California to about 88 workers in 12 states going on strike for 2 days last week. Now, the challenge, having been an organizer, the challenge once you pull off something like that is, well, what do you do next to keep the pressure on, to keep intensifying? So what the Walmart workers have announced is they've given the company an ultimatum to reverse the firings and disciplines of activists that they say were retaliation for activism.
Now, wait a second. Let me ask you, before you go any further, in terms of their ultimatum, what has taken place to those people who have gone on strike for a day or have been in some way organizing?
Oh, so the workers who went out on strike, so far there aren't any reports of retaliation against them. But over the year prior, workers who did things like get together a group of workers to confront a manager about an issue or take something on in their workplace or speak to their coworkers about getting involved in our Walmart, there are dozens of cases where our Walmart is alleging that those workers were fired or were given write-ups or discriminated against. And so the central demand of the strikes was not even about the conditions that people want to improve. It was about the retaliation against the people who have spoken up about improving the conditions. And that is now the central demand that our Walmart is making between now and Black Friday. That in order to avert a much bigger action on Black Friday, they say Walmart needs to reverse that retaliation.
Now, of course, once you get a guarantee of no more retaliation, right, and once there is some level of confidence on the part of the workers that there won't be retaliation, they are more apt to take more action.
That's right. And that's why I think what no one can really know is what will be Walmart's calculus about retaliation now. The Huffington Post reported on a memo that went out to all the salaried management in Walmart, basically telling them to follow the law. What we don't know is, at the upper reaches, how serious Walmart is about it. And so workers who worked at the company and scholars who've watched the company have told me they don't think the law is going to decide how much Walmart retaliates. They think Walmart is making a calculus about, if we come after people, if we bring down the hammer, is it going to inflame even more workers to go out on strike? Or can we successfully freeze the activism and have people so terrified everything goes back to normal?
Now, when we say law, we're talking about the National Labor Relations Act, right, which it would prohibit them from retaliating theoretically?
That's right. Whether or not you have a union. In fact, since union workers can sign away their right to go out on strike during the contract, in some sense, non-union workers have a stronger right on the books, not individually, but collectively, to walk off the job without being punished. The question is, what will Walmart do? Will Walmart go along with the law? And if they do, I think it'll be because of the media pressure and because of the threat of more workers getting involved, or will they try to suppress this? But come Black Friday, the workers say if Walmart has not just stopped retaliating, but reversed the retaliations that happened before, that they will have more people out on strike, that they'll be partnering with groups like the National Organization of Women to leaflet to Walmart's customers, that they'll have flash mobs, and that they'll make it a very memorable Black Friday for Walmart.
Now, for those of you who don't know, Black Friday is called Black Friday. It's the day after Thanksgiving. It's called Black Friday because this is the day where most retailers, I don't know if it's the case with Walmart per se, but most retailers are actually move into the black for the year. They make all their money essentially from Thanksgiving to Christmas. That's where they start to make their profits over the course of a year. And so any type of disruption on Black Friday could have serious implications for Walmart's year, right?
That's right. That's right. The risk for the workers is that if Walmart shows they still made a ton of money, people could look at that as some kind of rebuke to the workers. Absolutely. It's a moment of vulnerability for the company, both in terms of their bottom line and in terms of their brand. Because we see every year, even when there isn't a peep of labor protest, the media is fascinated by Black Friday shopping. Right. You always turn on the TV after Thanksgiving and you watch the lines of people outside of the stores for the Xbox. So there is the potential for this to be something quite special and that draws quite a bit of attention.
Do you think there's any chance that Walmart will head that off and say, okay, we're going to, I mean, what would happen if Walmart said, we're going to reverse our retaliation and you guys are all set. Don't worry about a thing. What happens then? I mean, is that in some ways, is that more of a challenge? I mean, I guess it cuts either way, right? Because now have you emboldened workers or have you basically made their campaign fizzle?
Well, I think victory brings its own challenges, but for that to happen, and if it happened, Walmart would never admit to retaliating, right? They would just say they've looked back at these people's records and they want to give them another chance and whatever else. But if you actually get Walmart to blink, that would be a further historic development in this totally historic series of strikes, and I think that would embolden more workers. It would not solve the problem of poverty at Walmart, but victory, I mean, Harvey Milk said you got to give people hope, and if you actually got Walmart to back down in that significant and that high-profile a way, there would still be a ton of organizing work to do, but I think that would send a signal to probably what is likely the silent majority of Walmart workers who have plenty of things they want to change about their job, but haven't yet decided it's worth sticking their neck out.
Are there outside groups that are talking about some type of solidarity actions with the Walmart workers in the event that there is an action planned for Black Friday? I mean, I imagine, I would imagine I can imagine like some Occupy groups or others. It's pretty easy to clog up the system, I would think, on Black Friday. I'm going to just be first in line at Walmart on that Friday morning, and I'm just going to take my own sweet time through that door. Of course, I'm going to be wearing full armor, body armor, because I get trampled. But is anything like that happening?
I think there's all kinds of potential for interesting actions like that. I mean, it's like Saul Alinsky once threatened and successfully got management to back down by threatening to have people occupy all of the bathrooms, all the bathroom stalls at O'Hare Airport right when flights were going back in. When I was an organizer in the hotel and restaurant industry, there are actions people did where community allies would just sit during rush hour in a restaurant and just drink water and not order anything other than toast. So there's all kinds of creative action that could happen. The UFCW and our Walmart are at the forefront of this coalition making change at Walmart, which includes some heavy hitters like the National Organization of Women and the National Consumer League, who've pledged to be there. I know anecdotally there are plenty of Occupy activists who find this extremely exciting and are eager to be out in support. And so I think while what we don't know is those 160 workers who went on strike, how many coworkers can they mobilize beyond that? Right. I think we can be confident that they will have plenty of community support there with them on Black Friday.
And you could go in there, pay in all like nickels and pennies for buy a stereo system, pay it for it all in pennies on Black Friday. Well, Josh, thanks for catching us up on this fascinating stuff. I appreciate your taking the time.